What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the State of the Program series on the Crossover U podcast. My name is Kanaye. I'm here with Josh today, and we get to talk about the UCLA Bruins and how Mick Cronin's squad looks going into this next season, what the state of the program is for UCLA. We're going to talk about what UCLA has lost, what they've added, how we feel about Mick Cronin, where they stack up in the Big Ten, and just the vibes out in LA going into this next season. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please like, subscribe, do anything you can to engage with our videos. Telling other people about it goes a long way to grow what we do here at the Crossover, just get more people to watch our videos. So let's get started with what UCLA has lost. Quite frankly, it wasn't too much in terms of production. I think the biggest loss was probably Sebastian Mack, who was around 10 points per game this past year for them. Kobe Johnson, Dylan Andrews, Ademara. Ademara, I think, had a pretty high ceiling that could get tapped into by Dusty May. We'll see what happens there out of Michigan. Overall, I don't think the losses are terrible. There were guys who probably, if you could get back, could ended up making a leap, but at the same time, you really just don't know. I feel like a lot of those players kind of just what they were.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of the biggest point to take away from them because no one on this list who left averaged more than 10 a game. Mac was 9.5. But Mac, Mara, and I think one or two of the guys transferred, which that hurts, As a Power 5 coach, you never want to lose, even good bench players to the portal. Mac was a starter. He was a guy I felt like could have been an incredibly useful player this year. He leaves and goes to Missouri. Good for him, honestly, but I just don't feel like what you put out effort-wise should be on this level to lose players like Mac, and particularly Mara, who goes to Michigan to play alongside a pretty, honestly, a better team than this one. Let's be real. That said, it's not bad. Kanaye's right, it's not bad.
Yeah, and some of those transfers might have been attributed to just Mick Cronin almost seemingly losing the locker room a few times this past season. UCLA was really good to start the year, and they were nationally ranked in the AP Top 25. But they kind of hit a skid, coincidentally, after Mick Cronin kind of called out not only his players, but his coaching staff as well, and called them mentally weak. That was a whole spew he went on, and it was really interesting to see it unfold in real time. But honestly, losses, I might go 7 here. It's really not bad.
Yeah, I think a 7 is fair. It's just how they were lost that hurts the most.
And I do think it is kind of important to consider that. I guarantee you at least one or two of those transfers probably kind of dealt with them clashing heads with Mick Cronin at points of the year, just from the way it seemed as someone who watches the sport. Now to get into ads, again, nothing too crazy here. Retention was a pretty large theme for them. They are getting back Tyler Bilodeau, who was at around 13.5 points per game this past season. Eric Daly, 11.4 points per game, and Sky Clark at 8.5. Sky Clark is a returning starter. They're also getting Trent Perry back as well as Brandon Williams. And again, important to keep guys around your program. Those are guys that are going to be building blocks of every season for you. Just considering they know how to run your system, they know how to execute offense, and what you want defensively, that's important. Transfers is where it gets really exciting for your Bruins fan. They were able to land who some people have as the number one transfer in this offseason cycle, that being Donovan Dent. Incredible year at New Mexico that he had this past season. Averaged around 20 points per game, added 5 assists to that, is one of the premier point guards in not only the portal this offseason, but also the country. That being said, do have some concerns about him playing against Big Ten competition full-time this year, as he kind of struggled against Michigan State in the second round in the NCAA tournament this past season. But they're also bringing in Jamar Brown, who averaged 17 points per game in Kansas City. Important to note, Josh pointed out to me off recording that he shot 40% from 3 on high volume at around 8 attempts per game. So that's really good. It's going to be interesting to see what role they have him in, but nonetheless, I think he should provide really good knockdown shooting.
Yeah, he kind of gives like a lower level Kobe Bryant type of vibe. And I think beside Dent, the thing that really is best with UCLA with this portal class and with anything else they're keeping and bringing in is depth. The starting 5, which we'll get to in a bit, doesn't really look that good at the end of the day, especially in the Big Ten. It's not something to really be honored about. But the depth of guys that can come in is probably the saving grace of Cronin and this portal side.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you out there. And in terms of ads, kind of teeter back and forth with where I have this, because I almost want to go 7 once again. But at the same time, I don't know if landing Donovan Dent kind of catapults your score to maybe something higher than a 7.
I think a 7 is fair. Dent is a top 5 transfer, don't get me wrong. His ceiling is pretty decent, but once again, he comes in from the mid-major level. And I think a point that, and I made this in the past, him, True Washington, and Nelly Jr. Joseph was a 3-man squad at New Mexico that is not going to be replaced. I just don't think that him, Bilodeau, and Eric Daly, which I would expect to be the 3 best players on this team, be as competitive as Dent was at New Mexico, which is weird to say, but at the same time, I feel like Dent will kind of be a one-man team at worst, and that might happen on quite a few occasions. Dent can wear it. He can be an Eric Dixon in that way, but that's not really how you should run a team, especially nowadays, and it's going to hurt Dent more than anybody else. So I think
Yeah.
7 is just like, it's the right move to make. Thank goodness they got Dent, because I don't know what this team would be without him, but there's no second man. There's no true, Robin to Batman in this team.
Yeah, I think 7's fair, just considering your points you just made. It is kind of funny to see how it played out, because I know in Donovan Dent's transfer portal recruitment process, he came out and said that he wants to go, 1, a place where he can get one of the biggest bags NIL-wise that he could, and 2, a team that has a Final Four ceiling. Now, I don't know if Mick Cronin and the AD over at UCLA made some promises like, oh, we're going to get this guy, we're going to get that guy if we can land you. But I'm just keeping it real right now. UCLA does not have a Final Four ceiling with this roster, in my eyes, unless Donovan Dent can just be a National Player of the Year type of guy and completely put this team on his back. It's just not looking that way right now. But before we get into how we feel about Mick Cronin, let's talk about what we think the starting lineup is going to be. Me and Josh project that UCLA's starting lineup on opening night will be a combination of Donovan Dent, Sky Clark, Trent Perry, Eric Daly, and Tyler Bilodeau. There is room for Jamar Brown to start. That will be something to watch. If not, then I think he's going to be a really productive 6-man off the bench for them. But overall, it's not one of the better starting lineups of the Big Ten. It's definitely being carried by the fact that Donovan Dent is in that lineup. But overall, it's not the worst, but it's definitely has a lot left to be desired.
Easily. Once again, like I said, I don't hate this lineup. When you compare it to other Big Ten lineups, you compare it to other, lineups that we put on for the sake of the program, it's not that good, but it's one of the best benches, in my opinion. Xavier Booker is still sitting on there. Hopefully he's not too deep into the bench, because I think he's always a forgetful guy. He has such a level of experience that he can be in that 6-man, 7th-man role. I think this is a bench that can run 10 deep at times, and that might be what saves UCLA this season.
Yeah, I definitely think the depth is going to be a crucial part of how their season goes, both in out-of-conference and in league play. I do fully expect them to be a tournament team, and the depth should definitely help it come March. But at the same time, it's just that starting lineup it's definitely not a strong one. But that being said, let's get into Mick Cronin. I'm going to go on the record here and say I am a big Mick Cronin fan. I got to respect how he is one of the few coaches to still wear a suit on the sidelines. Something I wish we would still see more of in college basketball. But nonetheless, I do think he's a solid coach, X's and O's wise. But at the same time, it's hard to ignore him losing the locker room last season. That's probably the reason, like we mentioned earlier in the video, why some of the guys who departed the program have ended up choosing to put their names in the transfer portal. And I think for one, to kind of call out not only your players, but your coaching staff, and say, oh, they're mentally weak. There's no mental toughness. Everyone just kind of, it's all sunshine and rainbows. No one's putting in work. Obviously, yeah, that might have been part of the problem. But at the same time, you need to take some accountability yourself, and to completely pin the blame on everyone else except for yourself, I just don't think that's the way to do it. And another thing is, too, you're the one who was recruiting these guys to come play for you. You shouldn't, again, there's only so much you can do with incoming freshmen. Transfers, I should say, incoming freshmen you've built a relationship with over the course of years. Several years probably. But at the same time, you should kind of have some sort of idea about the type of character that a player is bringing in or coming into your program with. And to kind of misread that to the point where you fall off that heavily from being ranked, I believe, as high as 22nd in the country in the AP poll to being unranked and fizzling out kind of towards the end of the season. I definitely hold that against Mick Cronin quite a bit. So I'd probably throw out a 5.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing too. Personally, I don't view Mick Cronin in the best light. I get the professionalism is cool, but at the same time, he crosses it out by his unprofessionalism behind the court. And generally speaking, there are far better coaches in the Big Ten right now. And I think he's on the hot seat personally. I think if you get Donovan Dent on your team and you're not considered in any top 10 rankings, that's a major red flag. If he does not perform well and get better than a 7 seed like they were last year, if they're not in the Sweet 16, I just don't see Mick Cronin staying on this team because you're just wasting talent. There is good talent in this roster. UCLA is a great market. It's one of the best markets for college basketball. And Mick Cronin has just, for the past, I think, 2 years, and hopefully not this year, ruined the opportunity that a very famous UCLA program has had, wasting away talent.
Yeah, and I really hope Donovan Dent kind of unlocks another aspect of Mick Cronin here, where I really don't think the last 2 years are fair to judge Mick Cronin by. I'm going to circle back and say, once again, I am a Mick Cronin guy. I think he's a good coach. To have over 500 wins at only 54 years old, I think that can't be ignored. I hope Donovan Dent is able to allow the rest of the country to see who the true Mick Cronin is, because I don't think what we saw out of him this past year, both on court product and the kind of shenanigans that went off the court with losing the locker room and all of that craziness that went down for UCLA. I don't think that's the true Mick Cronin. And I hope that this year, having a guy the caliber of Donovan Dent is able to get not only his coaching, but that program just back on track, because UCLA should be one of the best programs in the country. And the fact that they haven't been the last 2 seasons is really just unacceptable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And now to get into vibes, what do you think the vibes are if you're a Bruins fan?
Not that high on the vibes. I think first off, and actually we kind of can't ignore it as well. USC is kind of on the same level right now. If you're not beating USC in your classic LA rivalry, there's a bit of a concern there. I get it; they're going to be without Elijah Arenas this year, but even then, I feel like the rosters and continuity and the coaching, like they're very similar programs, and you shouldn't lose that. And also, Los Angeles is one of the biggest markets. Advertising the team that you're supposed to be having in good light, it's not. And Dent might be the only thing that's being advertised. I don't think most people know who's on this roster other than Dent, because everybody left, transferred, or who was brought in was not exactly that special. So I kind of feel like vibes are like 6, maybe 5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go 6, just because I think the sake of you landing one of the top transfers in this offseason cycle is definitely a morale booster. But again, like you mentioned, I do think it's important. A lot of UCLA students, fans, they might not know a lot of the guys on this roster this year outside of Dent. And again, just with what went down the last season with all the Mick Cronin stuff and the losing, the locker room, there's definitely some negative energy that's still hanging over. So I think a 6 would be fair there. I did kind of jump the gun going over to vibes because we did forget to talk about the Big Ten and where they stack up in that conference. This, honestly, it kind of falls in a line with what we've said in this video. They're, not going to be great. They should make the NCAA tournament, but I don't view them as one of the top teams in the Big Ten. And honestly, outside of Purdue, Michigan, pick your choice of Illinois, and whoever is to follow that, the Big Ten's not one of the top leagues in the country this year. It is very top heavy. I think when you go towards the bottom, it starts to get a lot weaker. And let's just be honest, UCLA isn't going to be one of the front runners in this league. While they will have the chance to play the likes of a Purdue and Illinois, a Michigan, and build a resume, get some quad one games under their belt, I just don't know if they have any chance in winning some of those games.
Yeah, listen. At the end of the day, playing like Rutgers and Penn State and all these guys from all over Cali is never fun. It's never really what we wanted to see as fans of college basketball. But regardless of the matter, they have to fly out a lot. They have to play a lot of big games against big programs, and they're not in a favoritive position. They're going to be very competitive in the Big Ten. They're in that 5 through 8 range, in my opinion. I don't really see them changing it. They're a lot like last year. I feel like this team kind of ends up being what they were last year. It's just that the talent is better in a way, with Donovan, Dent in particular, which annoys me so much because this team could be so much more with a player at Dent's caliber, but they feel like they're exactly where they were last year, which kind of leaves me to give this either a 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go 5 here. I just very much feel that they're in the middle of the pack in this conference. They're not going to – they'll win the games they should win, at least I hope if you're a Bruins fan, and they'll probably lose to the programs, I should say, that are towards the top of this league. So I think a 5 would probably be fair. They're just right in the middle. But again, I think that pretty much takes care of everything for this episode today. Like Josh mentioned, it is unfortunate that they didn't build a little bit of a better team around Donovan Dent, someone who is one of the most electric players in the country. Loved what he did in New Mexico. I'm sure he'll figure it out. Might have some struggles early on adjusting the Big Ten. but I think he's going to round out to being a really good player this upcoming season. I hope Mick Cronin is able to get back on track as a coach. And overall, I just hope that they bring some excitement out west, because those teams out west tend to not be so great the last few years. So definitely it would be nice to see some Western representation in March this year. But again, that's going to take care of everything for this episode today. Until next time, we will see you all.